Hey guys, this is my first What's for Dinner. In today's video, I will be preparing chicken and gravy, chili, and cheese and broccoli tortellini. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, please keep watching. Guys, so this week I am starting with one of my family's favorites, and that is baked chicken with gravy. So I start this recipe by adding a tad bit of avocado oil. I did not have any olive oil. I used it on a previous recipe, and it's about 2 tablespoons of oil. And then I add in 1 teaspoon each of pepper, garlic salt, salt seasoning, Old Bay seasoning, onion seasoning, and garlic powder. Now you can add in a little bit more or a little bit less. I do not add salt with this only because those seasonings can be a tad bit on the salty side, but at the very end you can always add salt to taste. I also add in 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. You can add in fresh garlic too here if you'd like. I stir up all of my seasonings and add it to the chicken thighs. Usually with the chicken thighs, I'll just add the seasoning and leave it in the bowl to marinate, but this time I just decided to mix it all together and put it in a Ziploc bag, which you'll see me do that in a moment, just to give it a little bit extra seasoning. So you're gonna have to really get in there and mix it up and make sure that it's all, well blended. But again, either way is fine. You don't have to mix it this way. And I just added this to the refrigerator for about, I don't know, 15 minutes. In a skillet, I do add another tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. And then I add chopped onions. And that's about a half of a chopped onion. It was just an onion that I had in the refrigerator that I needed to get rid of. So after I saute the onions lightly, I do add in the chicken thighs, and I just add those right on top of my onions. Depending on the amount of thighs you're cooking, the size of your skillet, the thickness of the chicken thighs, you do need to, you may have to adjust your heat a little bit. And just make sure that you're flipping these regularly to get a good sear on both. Now after I flip these a couple of times, I'll let them cook about a minute or so on each side. Then I add foil, and then I place the skillet into the oven, and I have my oven preheated to about 350 degrees, and I let this stay in the oven for about 30 to 45 minutes. Once I remove it from the heat, I do drain the excess drippings from the pan. I remove the chicken from the skillet because now I'm about to prepare my gravy, and I normally just use a chicken gravy packet. On this particular night, we're needing a little bit more gravy because we had company over. So I used 2 packets of chicken gravy. I add it in straight to the pan. I turn the heat on high, and I just start to whisk it until it becomes thick or until I get a rolling boil to my gravy. At that point, I add my chicken back into the gravy mixture, paying close attention to flipping it occasionally to saturate both sides. This was one of our favorite meals this week. I paired it with string beans and mashed potatoes and used some of the extra gravy on those mashed potatoes. It was delicious. So this next meal is another one of my family's favorite, especially on those cold winter days. It is chili. So I fill my crock pot about half full. I didn't really measure the water. And then I add in salt and pepper, and I also add in a chili seasoning. The chili seasoning that I used was a little bit spicy, so just be mindful of that if you plan to use the same kind. I also added in about 2 cups of pinto beans that had been washed, soaked overnight, and drained. In a skillet on low to medium high heat, I add in about a pound of ground beef. I also add in pepper, about a tablespoon of pepper, a tablespoon of salt, and I also add in more of the chili powder. Not a lot, just enough to taste. And then I add in 1 chopped bell pepper and 1 chopped onion. And I stir this in to get it well blended. After about 6 to 8 hours in the crock pot, I add in 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 1 can of petite diced tomatoes, 1 can tomato sauce, and 1 chili packet seasoning. And I also give it a really good stir to get those seasonings and everything well blended. I add in my drained ground beef and I give it another really good stir. And from this point, it's time to eat. I paired it with some cornbread and it was so delicious. This was another weekly favorite for us. So the next meal is something that I've never tried before. It is a minute chicken broccoli tortellini. So in a large Dutch oven, I added in my cubed chicken breast with 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. The seasoning mixture that you see is a half a teaspoon of pepper, a half a teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, along with 1 minced garlic. I stir the mixture until it's well blended. Once it is cooked all the way through, I remove it from the heat. In the same pot that I added my chicken breast in, I add in 1.5 cups of chicken broth, 1 cup of milk, and I stir it, getting all that goodness from the bottom of that Dutch oven. I then add in about 8 ounces of cheese tortellini and another bag of broccoli. Now the recipe calls for a fresh head of broccoli chopped, but I didn't have that, so we just used the bag of broccoli and it worked very well. After I let my broccoli and my tortellini simmer for about 5 to 10 minutes, I add back in my chicken breast and I let it simmer for about another 5 or 6 minutes, but not before I add in my Parmesan cheese, a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and 8 ounces of cream cheese cubed. I give this a really good stir, making sure that all of my ingredients are well blended and my cheese is melted, and it's time to eat. I paired this meal with a slice of garlic bread and an ice cold Pepsi, and it was delicious. I probably won't be making this again because my daughter didn't really care for the tortellini, and neither did my mom. I liked it. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us this week on what we had for dinner. See you next time. Bye.